want to just start by thanking you both for saying yes to today. So I want to welcome you both again, Hualani and Marie from Cape Town. And Hualani, you're from Toronto or?
Yeah, just north of Toronto.
Okay. Well, I want to start so listeners know, like, how did we all end up here? And it's interesting because I thought for sure you two knew each other. So we've been on Instagram and we've been interacting in these amazing ways for over a year at least. And recently, someone was going to have me on their show and they asked me, would you send me some questions? And I was like, ooh, like I prefer just to have people randomly ask me questions because I don't like to have it prefabricated. So I put it out there of what would you want to hear if it was you learned about wild power. And I'm not kidding. I don't know if you two know this, but Marie, you responded on Facebook and your list of questions was almost a mirror image of what yours were, Hualani, on Instagram.
Wow.
And I was like, okay, we had already talked about, I'd already kind of been wanting to get together with you two. But when I saw that, that's, I think, when I sent the email or the Instagram, I was like, hey, let's do it. Do you guys want to be on the show together? So that started our journey. There was just this clear alignment. And also, you both have spoken about, in different words, being a Black sheep and an exile. And we've talked a little bit about the sisterhood, the wound of that. So again, just to refresh our listeners so they know a little bit more, we met a couple, 3 weeks ago, just to kind of touch in together. And like, if we had a show, what would it maybe be about? Because there's so many topics. And my takeaway from that time was, the overarching theme, which I think we could talk about for hours, is the sisterhood wound, the wound of the feminine, and how there's this whole other arc of embodiment that's needed on all levels. But ultimately, I feel that we were really opening the portal around sisterhood and how do we heal together. And it takes the collective consciousness, and where are the ways that we feel exiled. So I thought we would just begin the conversation today, just really talking about, from both of your perspectives, what is sacred sisterhood, and where have we lost it, or how have we lost it along the way? And you can speak personally or how you see it collectively. We'll just start there.
The sacred sisterhood for me is a unified field of love that is embodied in that matrix of being together, whether it be physical or even non-physical. It's a non-physical substance that can be palpated. And through that sacredness, we uphold each other to our highest expression, to the wave of evolutionary impulse that's moving through humanity, as well as through each of us equally, so that we have this reflection of the greatness and genius within us, so that we have this reflection of the feminine genius and its true expression, and so that we have support to meet the challenges of really standing in our truth and power and love as a soul in feminine embodiment in this world that's built on the patriarchal matrix. And to address your second question, I feel it all roots back to where we turned away from the source of the divine, as well as the ancestral woundedness of when we were in our true expression as healers, as oracles, all those more expanded states when we didn't stand up for each other, when in particular the big story is being burned at the stake, knowing that some women gave us up for their own survival. In some ways that's understandable, but in other ways, if we were really aligned with the divine in our own soul's inner direction, would we have done that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's time to recoup that, to heal that all the way back to its root, and really stand firmly together as the feminine rises in its truth, not in a patriarchal version of its expression.
Thank you, Hualani. That's beautiful. Marie, do you want to add anything to that?
Yes, I think in my life, I've always had the sense of this is something, the sacred sisterhood is something I remember on a very deep level, and which is the place or the space we should be heading towards. So for me, it's something that is within the feminine, that we have definitely lost, which shows up in the world. But I feel there are bits and pieces coming together from women, more and more women realizing that they are remembering something extremely important. And the more we talk about it, the more it reemerges. And I definitely feel that since I was a child, I had this longing for something I didn't know what for. And also the stories I was told, for example, in church about the divine or about God didn't satisfy this longing.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And I could not identify with the idea of God being a father. And this was just something very intuitive for me, which also then meant that I never felt at home in something like a church.
Mm-hmm.
Even though I think when I was young, I did try, because I felt I need a spiritual home. But the older I got, the more I became in tune with the fact that it has nothing to do with religion for me. It has everything to do with what is already here and around us, even though time and space obviously is relative, but it is actually a power that is deep within us and that we have to remember. And it just becomes more urgent the older I get. This is the feeling I have. And I remember reading The Invitation by Orion Mountain Dreamer. I don't know if you know her or her books.
Love it.
Yes.
And I think I was about 18 or 19 when I read it. And it was the first time in my life that someone actually put into words the same longing that I felt.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember one of the things she actually said in the invitation was that she sometimes talks to the grandmothers, that she calls the grandmothers.
Right.
And it was the first time, it was something so simple, but for me, it was total revelation, because it was the first time I could actually identify with what someone experienced as divine guidance, or who to actually approach. Because yes, we all know the divine is you can't paint a picture of it or of us. I mean, it's in all of us. It's the idea that it's outside of us is we know that's wrong, but just to make it easier as in our human form to address something or someone, it helped me in a huge way to know I can actually imagine the divine as grandmothers and as sitting around a fire and asking them. And suddenly just more and more clarity started appearing in my life, and I understood myself more, because I was talking about black sheep I have 3 sisters. I'm one of 4. I've always been black sheep. Well, there's no doubt about it. And I remember, especially my mom was in an extremely difficult marriage when we were growing up. I sensed it since I was very small. And I knew it was my job. I just felt this urge that it was my job to encourage her to be stronger and to stand up against chauvinism or against emotional abuse. And I felt so strongly about what was happening in a marriage. That this was the first time I actually realized how compelled I felt to give back power to the feminine, and to the unfairness surrounding me in the world, especially regarding how some males treat females. And I also realized this was not just happening in my own home, this was happening all around me in other marriages. And I actually, when I was very, very young, I looked around me and I couldn't see one marriage that I would think of as a functioning marriage regarding the masculine and feminine interaction. So coming back to your idea of the sacred sisterhood, for me, it was picking up women or moments with women along the way who I could actually identify with, who realized their feminine side is actually divine, and it is the side that is actually needed in the world to lead humanity to healing. And the older I got, the more I understood that these random interactions I had, or these moments that I had of, if you want to call it, realization, or these moments of enlightenment, are all clues to where I'm heading. And Sacred Sisterhood for me is embodied in what we're doing now, the 3 of you, the 3 of us. And I feel if you feel it's within you, it's your duty to become a part of it and to speak, because there are so many people that need us to say something, and that would never have the courage to believe in even something as the Sacred Sisterhood, even though I'm convinced that's something that that is all every woman needs, is to realize sacredness of sisterhood and the feminine divine.
Yeah, I can really relate to that. And with respect to the grandmothers, my real sense of support began in my dreams. Well, actually, that's not true. It began as a child through my grandmothers. One grandmother was one of 13 sisters, widowed very early in her marriage, and ran a general store and refused all suitors. She was determined to do it all on her own. And she was a great reflection for me. But as I really stepped into my healing journey, particularly with respect to the feminine, in my dreams, this gathering of grandmothers would show up, and I'd be led to this cave, deep, dark cave, almost volcanic in nature. And there is this pool of water inside this cave, and the walls had and have, because I returned there, many symbols, very, very magical markings. And they would sing to me, and they would bathe me in this pristine pool, and it would just be so completely loving and supportive that I'd wake from the dream totally renewed, and often with inspiration. So I feel that every woman, and actually life and creation on this planet, is held by these concentric circles of grandmother elder sisterhoods that not only in the physical, but also in, like in my case, in the non-physical realms, and often in the shamanic lineages, there is a sisterhood that goes way back, which they're still in tune with. So I think it's very important that you've mentioned this. And personally, with respects to noticing with what didn't make sense to me as a teenager, I was always fighting the norm, always speaking up to. It's like every spring we'd go to the cottage and I would get to wash all the dishes in the cupboards, and my brothers would be out there hauling wood. And every spring I would go, why can't I haul wood? Right? Why do I have to be the one to wash the dishes? Why can't we switch? Right? That's just one example of many. So it's all of this that's waking up in us, where we have this sense of the truth, where the feminine isn't compartmentalized based on old structures and beliefs and ways of doing things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I feel from both of your shares so far, it seems that the undercurrent is needing to remember our belonging. You know, it's like you both are speaking of the grandmothers in this way. Marie, you're talking about it didn't make sense that God was outside of you, but that was the only thing you were given. And so I feel it, you know, this sacred sisterhood, I almost feel like we could take this conversation even to a different level, which is just sacred being.